Progressive overload is absolutely required for muscle growth. And again, it's a point people try to argue who don't understand the concept. They don't understand what's going on. And they'll say things like, well, as long as we get a pump, as long as we do this, as long as we do that, we're going to have muscle growth. And the answer is no. Without progressive overload, you are simply not training hard enough to gain muscle. And what I mean is, if you were training hard enough to gain muscle, okay, and let's say let's not even talk about cheating. Let's say you do the hardest versions of every exercise. You do nothing but extremely long range of motion movements, controlled, all of this stuff. So let's put all those variables aside. So let's go with everything. A lot of the pro bodybuilders will say that, well, no, we need long range of motion. We need controlled eccentrics, no cheating. So let's say you take that approach, okay? And you are training hard enough with high quality sets that are very close to failure or to failure, or even beyond failure, okay? You will have to gain reps or gain weight if you're gaining muscle. It is impossible for you not to. Okay, let me state that again, because you're now training everything strict. There's no way to cheat weights up. So what we know based upon all the available evidence, a bigger muscle has more strength potential. Well, if you're working hard, strength potential means you will gain more reps. In other words, you're going to either add reps infinitely or you're going to have to put some more weight on the barbell, dumbbell, or machine. You have no other choice, because otherwise the sets become easy, in which case they're obviously not stimulating any growth. So that's kind of a conundrum with that idea when people say, well, no, you just have to do X or Y. Well, maybe you've heard that from a bunch of guys who use metric tons of anabolics, who have great genetics. But for everybody else, no, you're going to have to progressively overload. If you're going to have to, you have no choice. Because otherwise, if you really were gaining muscle, let's say your strict incline bench, right? Where you pause on the chest. So there is no real way to cheat. You're pausing on the chest, right? Like I'm doing there. If your chest and your triceps are growing, you're not going to be doing the same easy sets. You're eventually going to add reps. Why? Because you'll get stronger by default. So in other words, if you're still doing 135, let's say for sets of 10, and you never increase it, if you actually trained hard enough with that to gain muscle, it will eventually start getting too easy. It will get easy enough to where you won't gain any muscle from it because it's just not hard. In other words, I think we can make the fair case. I think we can make a fair case based upon observing the real world, observing the best bodybuilders for decades, generations, and looking at what we know in the lab. Okay? We can make the assumption that we probably need to be around within 5 reps of failure. If we have more than about 4 to 5 reps, and I'm talking at the most, like that's even pushing it. Yeah, in other words, if there's a weight that if you were to really push it to the edge, you could do 15 reps and you stop at 10. You're probably not gaining any muscle from it. That's probably a useless set. It's really just a warm-up. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying you have to train to failure to gain muscle, because you don't seem to have to. It produces really good growth, though, when you do. And I think there's a pretty reasonable consensus on the fact that anything beyond that, I think almost everybody agrees, right? I don't care whether it's a pure bodybuilding bro, anyone who looks at the science. I think everyone agrees. You start getting about 5-6 reps away from failure, it is doing nothing for your muscle growth. It just isn't. Because the training is simply not hard enough to cause any significant adaptation. It's just not. Because that's the whole point with progressive overload. You have to disrupt homeostasis. The human body doesn't like to gain muscle. Gaining muscle is hard for us. Like, we gain endurance extremely easy as a species. And a lot of people don't know this, that we're very much an endurance-based species. Most other animals are stronger than us pound for pound, right? They tend to be stronger than us pound for pound. They really are. we're really good at endurance. So much so, I think people forget that fact that endurance hunting used to be a thing. That's even how we tamed wild horses originally as a species. We ran them down on foot. Now people say that there's no way you can run a horse down. People who run all the time can. It might take them 6 hours to run it down, but that horse will tire before a distance runner will. Right? We're talking humans in our more natural habitat, not fat people who don't exercise. We're an endurance species, so gaining muscle is hard for us. Like our body is resistant to gaining muscle. It really is. And if you don't understand, simply look at a chimpanzee or a gorilla who doesn't lift weights at all. Look how jacked they are. Just to put it into perspective. Okay? These are animals with a fairly high genetic overlap with us. They're relatively similar. But notice that difference. They don't lift weights to look like bodybuilders. Okay? They don't. So, by comparison, so we struggle with it. So you have to disrupt that homeostasis. And if we're not putting our body into a situation to where it feels that it is going to get injured, if we do not add more tissue proteins to a muscle, because that's really what it is. It is a defense against injury. It's a defense against that chronic stress that you're placing on it, or your body saying, oh, we have to do this, or we're going to get hurt. Because it's metabolically expensive to gain muscle. It costs calories, it uses calories. We're kind of built to survive famines and ice ages. We're built to survive starvation very effectively. Gaining a bunch of muscle is not beneficial to that end. Okay? So you have to disrupt the homeostasis, and that means you have to progressively overload. Because if you don't, so if you were training hard enough to gain muscle, you'll stop gaining muscle if you don't progress, because the work is just too easy at that point. And that's the idea. So there needs to be a general increase in like your tonnages and stuff, assuming you're not changing the form to do it. I'm assuming the same form, the same range of motion, all those things. I'm not talking about cheating to add more reps, or more weight, right? We're talking using the exact same form. You've got to get more total tension on the muscle, either in the form of repetitions or in the form of actual resistance. Otherwise, you will simply stagnate. That's it. That's the simple reality of it. And you don't get that, and people say, well, I'm not progressing. Well, you're not being patient enough. Or you're not training hard enough, obviously. One of the two. Or you're not recovering. That's usually your situation. All right, something in your diet and lifestyle is not dialed in. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.